looking at local resources and trying to keep material cycles as close as possible. And we did a number of projects in the Philippines, but also in Europe. So the idea is to reduce the energy and the resource intensity of the building sector, which is currently by far the most resource intensive sector. So like more than 50% of the resources and 50% of the waste is generated in this business branch, and we should do something about that. And if we look at, for instance, traditional building methods from all over the world, all different climate conditions, we always find perfectly adapted technologies, perfectly adapted to cold, hot and humid or dry climates, with a comfortable indoor atmosphere. Just nowadays we have kind of lost this knowledge. It is kind of equalized. So we are getting used to having our environment treated to fit our needs by electric or energy using devices like air conditioners, like heaters, and that doesn't have to be that way actually. And we can find still very good examples from also Philippine conditions where we can learn a lot from. That doesn't mean the houses have to look like they are ancient huts, but what I'm trying to say is learning from the principles and bringing them back into a modern architecture. And that is exactly what we did with the S House in Europe, which is an award-winning project. We have got a lot of acknowledgement from Japan, but also Europe and some national awards. Also the National States Award for Sustainability in Architecture was awarded to this particular project. And what we did is using straw bale insulation. Straw bale is a residue from agriculture, and we made a very modern building with that type of materials, which is to be you can have a look at the website, and there's a lot of information about this project. And the key is that the project is consuming only 10% of what a conventional building of the same size and functionality would consume. So if you build the same structure and make it look exactly the same and function as well, then you need 10 times the resources and 20 times the energy to operate it. So that means you can have an enormous increase of energy efficiency. And if the remaining energy share for the operation is down to just 5% of what a conventional building uses, then all of a sudden the remote and self-sustaining energy supply comes within reach. So as of now, we're discussing about energy self-sufficient buildings in terms of huge solar panel on the roof and battery storage, because we still think we have to supply a lot of energy. But when we get down the demand to very, very tiny share, then we can do that with far simpler devices. And once the heating and cooling, which is still the major share of the entire energy consumption in the building, is already solved by a proper architecture and proper selection of material, then we can start to focus on what else do we need, what are the energy using devices in a household, and that breaks down to cooking, hot water, light, computer and media. And out of these, again, we easily find that the big energy consumers are again those who are providing a thermal set of energy services. Like the cooking, we don't cook with electricity, but we cook with the heat generated from electricity. And that means if we're able to provide the heat for cooking in an alternative manner, we are also getting rid of this electricity share. So, plus there is a certain education on behavior also necessary. If you look at this picture, that is a typical situation that we find in our modern life. So if it's very cold, if it's very hot outside, then usually the indoor temperatures are cooled down to, let me say, 18 degrees, which makes people feel comfortable. And then on the other hand, in cold climates, when it's very cold outside, then we're heating the indoor up to 25 and even more. So that means we feel comfortable here with 25 in winter and comfortable with 18 in summer. If we're able to reverse that share, then we can already save like 30% of the energy just by behavioral measures. So that should be also taken into account when we think about, isn't it enough to have 24 degrees in summer as a comfortable indoor temperature? So okay, let me come back to the energy devices and how to solve that. Once we know that the major share goes into cooking and cooling, then we can as well think about alternative strategy. That is what we are going for with the so-called wireless house. So wireless stands as a symbol for a living unit that can operate without infrastructure, without grid connection. And how we're doing that is by minimizing the overall energy demand and then supplying the remaining energy with the sources that we find. And there are five basic assumptions for the wireless house, which are: the heating and cooling demand is reduced, as I already said, by passive solar architecture. And the thermal energy will be generated on a mid-temperature level, that means about 250 to 300 degrees, not just 100 as with thermal collectors usually. And that provides enough energy for running all thermal energy services from the collected heat. And by doing so, we can also minimize the conversion losses that are usually associated with the transport and also with the conversion of energy. If you run a generator, for instance, only 1/3 goes into electricity, the rest is waste heat. Not so if